tick. And we are live. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It is 2120. We had a couple little hiccups tonight getting on the air, but this is the Brushfire Mind, and thanks so much for joining us. Here we are to discuss politics, movies, music, comic books, bad ideas, great ideas, a little philosophy here and there, and the zeitgeist in general. So tonight, so far, I have with me Patrick Brown, who is one of the most well-connected people I know that's not actually elected. And my good buddy John Byrne, one of my spook buddies from back in the way back when. And he's coming to us. You're in Florida still, John?
Yep, Florida.
So he could hop a bus and get up here in a hot minute. We might just have to talk about a barbecue not too distant.
Let me know.
Oh, you would shit yourself to see the grill.
Hey, I'm looking forward to seeing your youngins there.
Yeah. Patrick, describe for John in that colorful language you're so kin to the glory of the barbecue.
It is a many splendid thing.
So what we did is we took a 1,000-gallon propane tank and chopped the round end off of it, put feet on that, and then made a grill to go across the top of it. It's roughly 72 square feet of open grilling space. And we cook over not charcoal, not gas. No shit, hard wood.
Mm-hmm.
Just got a great big pile of hard wood, oak and hickory and whatever, stacked up and ready to rock. And yeah.
Maybe we need to go out and get a pig.
What's that?
And it's good.
Go out and get a pig.
Done. Been there. No problem.
No, not one of those barnyard pinkies.
Huh?
Not one of those barnyard pinkies. I'm talking about one of those mean old backcountry boars with the 3-inch tusks that weigh about 300 pounds.
Well, we haven't done one that big on this pit, but we have done the 2.5 to 300 pound pigs more than once around here. And that's a glorious thing. Usually we do those down at the lake house. So we'll have the pig out on the big picnic table outside. You don't really. Yeah, the women fix plates. We fix plates for the kids, but mostly men stand around with grease dripping off our beards, drinking beer, just picking hands.
All the more reason to even have a beard.
Exactly. Just ripping handfuls of meat out of the side of that carcass. Ah.
The last time we did a pig roast like that, it's been a long time ago. I don't think the last pig roast I went to at the lake house, it's been years ago, but we were standing around like Chris said. We just kind of reach over casually and grab this steaming handful of pig and we were doing our best Tim Allen impression. You know, the man started.
Yeah.
And then there were the cigars. Oh. Bobo and his bag of cigars.
Yeah.
Now, did you have a chance to look up something called Declaration Entertainment?
You know, I actually watched. So all day today, I've been working on a philosophy paper that I'm writing.
Okay.
And back and forth through it as part of my research. Patrick just dropped. He'll be right back. But back and forth while I've been doing it as part of my research, I did, in fact, crack open a little Bill Whittle and watched several videos One of which got me thinking about a topic that I'd actually like to discuss for a minute. As you both know, oh, hey, Cody McKinney. Let me just deal with this kid real quick.
Hot man.
We're on now. I'll send you a link. I just heard a loud thump upstairs, and then I heard my wife say, "Hooray!" which means that the boy probably crawled off the edge of the couch and hit the ground, and she was trying to make him think that it was a successful thing.
He'll bounce.
Oh, he does. Yeah. He's got a hard head. The boy's no joke. I got him a little plastic axe. He hits me in the face with it. It's adorable.
And I approve that message. Yes, I do.
Yep. I think I wanna take his little plastic axe and get a Sharpie and write the words "Just do it" on the side of the axe.
Oh, God.
On both sides of the axe.
Yeah, that was hilarious.
I saw that running on Facebook the other day, right? Picture
of the axe said,
logo on it says "Do it."
You got to look it up on his website. It's funny.
I left a comment when I saw it. I said, "Don't they all say that? Mine do."
Did you see the internet meme going around about Bernie Sanders and Hillary from New Hampshire? Did you see that one?
No.
You'll have to be a little more specific.
The one, it was the top photo, and it was Hillary making one of her faces, and it said, Hillary lost New Hampshire, but walked away with the same amount of delegates as Bernie Sanders.
Oh, yeah,
yeah.
It's got the photo of Bernie Sanders in there, like, that moment you realize you worked really hard for something, and then it was taken away and given to somebody.
Yeah. There you go, Bernie. Socialized voting.
Yeah.
Holy shit! I see Cody.
What's up, guys?
What's up, Maniac?
Not much, man. Working on a little counterterrorism and some writing courses for college while I'm watching the news.
Holy shit! You're that airline's receding on you. You're starting to look like fucking
getting old, bro.
Grown-ass man. This is not the same skinny little kid I took to Afghanistan with me.
No. I'm a wee bit bigger than I was back then.
You're a wee bit bigger. Watch this.
Nice.
Oh my God.
Daddy's got to get his fat. I'm leaning back a little bit.
Aren't you?
But I'm around 340. I need to get my fat ass back in the gym.
All right, now Chris, I'm going to run you up and down a couple of hills.
No.
You ought to see this guy run down a hill.
Holy I can fly down a hill.
Now, when I knew Chris, he was about 45 pounds maybe. He had a hell of a time going up a hill. And he'd huff and puff in the red face and just be dying. But you get to the other side of the hill, and holy crap, you hear this dunk, 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 dunk. And Chris passed everybody by.
Yeah. Now for bonus points, Chris, when you were going down the hill, did you do it? Even for me, the Fezzik, did you do it? Come on, everybody,
no,
move.
No.
Didn't give him enough time, did you?
Nope.
Now, when I first met Chris, he was similarly shaped as to he is now, including the hair. The only difference being the he didn't have the whole walrus tusk beard looking thing. It was all one solid color.
Yeah, this is a more recent development with the gray. It actually grows like the fork. I'm shaping it a little bit there, but it actually grows like that. It doesn't get any longer here. When I was younger, I had this huge bald patch right here, and now it's filled in, but it just stays there.
Now,
Yeah.
you ever watch a film called Vikings?
Yeah, braid that shit out.
There's a man's film. I like that thing.
I got a buddy here locally who's a professional Santa Claus, and he told me he's making me an appointment for July to get bleached, get ready for the next season. I gotta tell you, man, it's tempting. There's a profit margin in it.
Oh, yes, there is.
And not a small one.
Yeah, now that I'm a dirty, filthy contractor, by the way, Chris, I'm out now.
When did you get out?
The 11th of last month.
Oh, so you just got out.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You were doing MI too, I take it.
What's up?
You sound like you were doing military intelligence also.
Yeah, Chris and I were stationed together in Hawaii, and I branched off up here into the deep, dark depths of the cyber realm. And I just got out on the 11th, so I just picked up a contracting gig over at United States Cyber Command, working with them.
Good luck.
Yeah, it's
Your soul.
it's different. Corporate side is a lot different than what Chris and I were doing back in the good old days. So it took some adjusting, but the new gig is pretty promising considering the level of scope that you get at the 10,000 foot view, and taking it up to Cyber Command is just going to open that up even more.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'd love to catch you offline sometime and hear more about it, but I know there's only so much you can discuss.
Yeah.
Don't forget, hey, and before you say anything too interesting, remember we are broadcasting live right now, so any idiot can log on and watch us.
Trust me, after the last 3 years, seeing what certain people have done, my P's and Q's on the classified side are very healthy.
Now wait a minute. You're okay as long as you put all of your classified emails on your private server.
Yeah, as long as I delete them before the FBI comes to look at them, right?
Well,
Right.
put them on a private server first. That's key.
Oh man. Yeah, it's crazy. The last.
Okay, so I got two guys here who have a little bit of a background. Oh, we dropped. Okay, there's Patrick again. So
That's the second time it's booted me.
So for you two, Patrick's a civilian. Are you actually smoking, Cody?
Vaping. I'm one of those douchebags now.
Oh my God, metrosexual.
It's cool. It's cool.
Hipster.
I tried vaping. I tried vaping for a little while as a method to quit smoking, and turns out I had to quit vaping for my health. Went back to good old analog cigarettes.
Yeah, my buddy at the office calls it blowing hard drives. I mean, they kind of do look a little bit cool.
My vape. I took an old oak stump and a chainsaw and carved a tiki god head out of it. That's about the size of my coffee cup here.
That makes sense. Knowing you, that makes perfect sense.
So that I could use the big, what is it, the 3660 battery?
Oh yeah, the supercells?
Yeah. And so yeah, I carved it out of wood, and when I say I did all the wiring by hand, I mean that for the battery contacts, I hand coiled copper wire into copper spring contact posts and built it out like that.
Yeah.
I ran it with about a .024 ohm quad coil dripper.
Yeah.
Clouds.
You don't do anything lightly, do you, man?
No, why not? I mean, go big or go home.
Yeah, the little mod that I've got now is actually pretty sweet. It's 150 watt, and it'll run a 0.3. I think I'm running about a 0.3 right now. But I don't know, man. It became an interest that turned into a hobby more than anything else. Just to be able to tinker with stuff, and that gets expensive quick. And I like guns way too much to be tinkering that much.
Yeah. Yeah.
Guns are expensive.
Well, you remember my airsoft.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Ooh. Yeah. Hey, Patrick, tell them about the trailer.
Yeah, your 16-foot trailer of fun.
Yeah. Yeah, so the airsoft guns, I actually turned that into a business for a little while.
Did you really?
Yeah, he did.
Patrick did a few shows with me.
Nice.
Yeah,
I got a
everyone
trailer. I got a 16-foot job trailer and customized the inside into a workshop slash arms room.
Nice.
You remember I got one of the old school Army M4 rack or M16 racks, right?
Yeah, the one we used to load in the F-150 all the time.
Yeah, so I'm still driving that F-150, by the way, and it's still running like a fucking champ and towing that trailer. But that trailer, I'll pull it up to a site, and I'll load out a couple of folding tables and lay the guns out on the folding tables and load up magazines and lay those out next to the guns. And then I've got I've got 2 racks that hold 4 targets each. I'll hang those up so we got 8 targets, and I'll put them about 30, 40 feet away from the tables. I mean, they're airsoft guns. We're not shooting long distance for accuracy. And you know, I've set it up. I've done it at gun shows. I've done it at charity events. I've done. I did for the Boy Scouts. We did Praise the Lord and Pass the Ammunition Bible Study Gun Safety Sundays. And we just had a big old time. I've even got one of the gas-powered mods that's mechanically identical to a real M4, so it'll physically break down the same way. I mean, no shit, I can hand that one to a man who is intimately familiar on a professional level with firearms, and until you open it up and look at the where the firing pin should be, I don't mean just look at the bolt carrier. I mean, you got to take that sumbitch out and look at the end of it where the firing pin should be, and that's when you can physically see the mechanical difference.
Huh. So they put all the barrel mechanisms within inside the bolt carrier group.
It's all there.
That's pretty wicked smart.
It is.
Even gives you full propane blowback.
Nice.
So, like, we set it up at gun shows. There was a gun show at the Georgia International Horse Park, and I set it up outside of that. As you know, you got the line going into the gun show. The gun show is indoors. It's in this big like stadium arena thing. So we set it up right outside, right before the entrance door. And so while everybody's waiting in this long line to pay their entry fee to get in, just pay their cover fee to get in the gun show, we're standing there. Hey man, $5, shoot 100 rounds. $10, I'll give you 300 rounds. $20 for 1,000, and for 30, I'll put on a mask and you can try to outdraw me.
That's wicked, man.
And I'm pretty sure that if we hadn't been doing that when it was 20 fucking degrees outside, we probably would have made a lot more money.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably.
Well, when we did the horse park show, it wasn't real cold, and that one went pretty well.
Yeah, that one. That wasn't the Augusta.
I did a couple of shows for charity events last year during the summertime, and those went great.
Yeah. I think it was one of the first ones that we did, the Augusta one. I think it was. That one was meh.
Yeah. Well, and that was our first show. It was way too far out there. I mean, Augusta is a fucking drive with that big ass trailer.
Yeah.
And we stayed in the shittiest hotel I've ever stayed in.
Where are you based out of now, Chris?
I'm in Conyers, Georgia, about 30 minutes outside of Atlanta.
Okay.
Look up the Georgia International Horse Park. That's us. It's 20 minutes up the road from me. So, yeah, remember the Columbine shooting?
Yeah.
Yeah, we were the month after. That's where I am right now.
Just about to the day, I think.
No, exactly to the day. Columbine was April 20th. Heritage was May 20th.
I was going to say pretty close to that, if not spot on.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
So, how do you guys know Chris?
Well, Byrne John with the little goatee there went to DLI with me.
Okay.
And Patrick here with the fuller beard and the glasses. I've known him since high school.
High school. They had that when you were a kid?
Yeah. Yeah.
They could barely contain us.
I can't imagine Chris in high school.
I was a lot like I am now. I was less gray. I was less gray. I was more vocally conservative. I was a little more canting conservative.
Okay. Yeah,
a little more black and white.
I've been delving into the political side since I started school up back in January, and I've kind of always put off politics because I was focused on mission at hand. And now that I'm kind of taking a step back and getting introduced to society a little bit more of a normal basis, it's been
frightening,
really rapid and terrible. Yeah, it's fucking scary, dude.
Okay, you know what? Tell us about that. I'm going to step back toward this door and smoke a cigarette. Talk about that a little bit, because that'd be very interesting to hear about.
Yeah.
Because, well, Patrick and I mean, Burn's a flipping lawyer.
Huh.
And not quite 50. I tease Byrne because when he joined the Army, when John Byrne just one day decided, you know what, I'm a red-blooded American that wants to go and kill some enemy and do the American thing. Well, by the time he did that, he had already had a Juris Doctorate. He had already served as a lawyer, sat the bar in several states, was a grown-ass man. He wasn't some wet behind the ears 17-year-old shitbag coming out of high school to Penberthy his way around the track. Cody, you were never a shitbag. That I can say for sure. Cody was never a Penberthy.
You would not be hanging out with Chris. Would not be hanging out with you, Cody, if you were a Penberthy. And this I know.
Yeah.
Cody here, when we were Cody was in Hawaii with me, and he used to go play airsoft with me. And part of what got us into airsoft, other than I love guns and shooting people, was the idea that if we as a unit went and played airsoft together often in a modern military world where our enemy is in fact an asymmetrical force, and I want to talk about that and the recent change from an asymmetrical warfare to an amorphous warfare that is not being discussed and needs to be, because the difference is staggering and the importance of it is almost being ignored. And
you're talking about fifth-generation war, not fourth-generation bullshit.
Yeah.
The Pentagon has been so in love with their latest, greatest discovery, fourth-gen war, that they're all still, thinking it's 1975, and this is a brand new toy to them. The world has moved past that.
Yeah. Asynchronous warfare, asymmetric warfare, that's over. It's amorphous now.
Yeah, you've got to be able to adapt to an enemy that's absolutely everywhere. But to hash on what Chris was talking about, putting the guys together and running them through. I mean, we started out in a really small field. Well, actually, we started out in a kitchen in the middle of Honolulu that was converted over to an airsoft arena, but it was all of about, what, Chris, maybe 1,000 square feet?
Maybe.
They took a kitchen of an old Chinese food restaurant, opened part of it up, and they had a closed-in section and a catwalk and a little bit of a shoot house that was built into it. But sitting back and talking with Chris after running a couple of rounds playing through there, it was like, this is pretty similar to the urban environments that at the time we were looking to get ready to deploy into. And after doing probably a good months of hands-on shooting exercises, moving in combat pairs and teams, it was a playground that we could plug into every weekend to communicate and build our team, so that we knew how to. Everything just became second nature, and I attribute a lot of that to the time that we spent in there, just moving, and communicating, and applying it over and over again. But we were still having a blast doing it.
Became a synchronized unit.
Yeah.
By the time you're all done with that, it's just airsoft. But I know for a fact those rounds hurt.
Yeah.
I did a room clear.
Some animals respond to pain real well.
I was the point man going into our room. Now I got the front two guys, but I died too.
Yeah.
The point man is gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get that point guy into a room. Throw a freaking hand grenade.
Yeah, well, a majority of the time, if you're actually hard breaching what you suspect to be a hostile room, you're going to use some sort of distractionary device or some sort of munition that's not attached to the warfighter to go in and clear that room. And we actually had simulated grenades that we were lobbing into windows.
What, the little M80s or little civilian flashbangs?
Well, we couldn't... I think we had a good long conversation at Denny's one morning about developing a less intense flashbang that we could use, but with the consideration of having as many kids playing with us as we did, we kind of decided against that, and we just used the standard Tornado 100 BB grenades and just lobbed those into the room. But it was... We moved from the kitchen. It was small. We could only run probably about 2 6-man teams against each other effectively within that space. Anything other than that was chaos.
Yeah.
But when we found the place out in Capillay, that was amazing because you had shoot houses set up. You had more paintball style field where you had just sporadic obstacles throughout the length of the field, and you could run any and every scenario on that you wanted to, short of stuff that requires long range support. And
well, as I understand it, a lot of these small towns in America now have abandoned malls.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go.
Exactly.
I would love to buy one of those and open like an airsoft theme park in it. We've talked about this I think I've talked about this with all three of you guys at one point.
Yeah.
But instead of going down that road, John, you would shit to see this stuff. I've got, I own enough M4s literally to arm a squad, including your two main support weapons. So I can take a standard 8-man squad, arm 6 of them with M4s. I've got more than that, but arm 6 of them with M4s. Give one of them, I've got a 240 Bravo, and I've got a 249.
Okay. I like the 249.
And of course, each team on the squad needs a grenadier. So I've got a dozen or so of those hand grenades they just spray BBs. They spray like 300 BBs in a 360-degree pattern. So I give each man three or four of those. Each grenadier, 3 or 4 of those, and I've got M203s for their M4s. Right. So no shit. 3 riflemen, 2 with M203s, and then I've got enough guns beyond that to arm a 40-man. No, 30-man OP4 to go against them. I've also got the multiple grenade launchers, the rocket launcher. I've actually got an old school, not AT4.
Law?
Yeah, M72A9. Yeah, the light anti-tank weapon. And Tommy guns, M14s.
Oh, dude, he's got all sorts of crazy stuff. I mean, outside of the conventional.
MP7s.
This is all airsoft, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
We've got remote-controlled detonated Claymore mines.
We'll throw that in the recording for whoever's listening into the call. Yeah. all completely airsoft.
And it all has its very own special place in the trailer. I've even got one of the old school World War II grenade launchers. It's basically the M203, but it's a standalone. It looks like a rifle that just has a barrel that's 40 millimeters.
Yeah, it's a proper M79.
Yep.
That's exactly right. M79. That's the one.
So speaking of the MP7s, I had all my stuff loaded up when I was moving back into the East Coast, and I was in Arizona of all places, and I've got a big metal case that's got all my guns in it for airsoft, and then I have another hard case that's got all my real guns in it. So I'm going through the airport, hopping onto a connecting flight, and my name gets announced over the airport speaker. Will Cody McKinney please report to, Han Banana's desk in terminal whatever. And I'm like, what the hell's going on? So I get over there. Arizona PD is at the counter. They've got my airsoft case open, and they're sitting there. They're looking at it, and they're like, that can't be real. There's no way that can be real. That's nobody has those. Blah, blah, like having this conversation. And I walk over there, and I was like, afternoon, gentlemen, can I help you? And they're like, yeah, can you explain why you have a fully automatic submachine gun? And I'm like, I'm going to take it you boys aren't exactly too familiar outside of the standard kit. And they're like, what do you mean? And I was like, you guys probably don't have a lot of experience with weapons outside of pistols and shotguns that you all carry around. And they're like, yeah, it's pretty much what we use. And I was like, that's a military simulation tool right there. I was like, it shoots those plastic little BBs that are sitting up in the top left corner. I was like, everything that's in this case is an airsoft weapon. And they're like, airsoft? What's airsoft?
Oh, jeez.
So, yeah, after, which that case didn't end up getting lost in transit. It was all passed on to the next site. They lost my actual weapons case in Arizona after all that, which they didn't even pull the actual weapons case off of the line at all. Like, that wasn't near my other case at all.
Did you recover it?
Oh, hell yeah, I recovered it.
I was about to say. I would buy a new gun to go get my guns back.
Yeah. No, that was crazy. I got to the airport over in Dulles, and I'm sitting at the oversized baggage cart, and my airsoft stuff comes through first, and I'm like, go figure. I would have thought that would have got lost in transit somewhere, because I just barely made my flight back into Dulles, and the weapons case was with those guys when I left, and it was probably only about 4 or 5 minutes in between that little checkpoint in the terminal that I got to. So my bigger weapons case didn't end up coming out at all, and I talked to the people at the baggage, and they're like, yeah, it's still in Arizona. It never made it on the plane.
Last thing on is the first thing off.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
I thought you were an MI guy. Come on, man.
Yeah, I don't do logistics. That's not my realm.
So, okay, let me grab this thing again real quick, because I got some notes on here. So we've had a good night. We've been on the show now for just under an hour, and done a lot of jaw jacking and chit chatting, which is fantastic. I do want to get to something since we were just talking about guns. I watched a little brief commentary on the Second Amendment earlier. Bill Whittle talking about the language of the Second Amendment, because it is one of the libs' favorite arguments that, oh well, the way the Second Amendment's written, it's just for people in a militia. Yeah, not so much.
Depends on how you define militia.
Well, I mean, to even make the argument that the
one man with a rifle is a militia. That's a militia of one.
Well,
right.
Even that, the wording is a well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, I mean, that's not hard. That's just plain old grammar.
Yeah.
It does not. The sentence does not associate the right with the militia. It is the right of the people. And the thing about the Bill of Rights is it assumes that the rights which are enumerated in the Bill of Rights are natural rights, and that the point to the Bill of Rights is not to grant those rights, but rather to list them and specifically state that this right shall not be altered in any way by any government. In fact, the
Chris?
First Amendment language does leave room for the individual states to establish a state religion or to censor speech.
Those amendments were written to restrain a centralized federal government from
Correct.
overarching
But,
powers on the states.
well, hold on a second, John. Not to belittle your point, but let me get back to my point real quick. One of the key differences between the first and the second is the First Amendment says the Congress shall make no law respecting the establishment of a religion, so on and so forth. The Congress shall not injure these
I
rights.
see your point. Okay.
Whereas the Second Amendment mentions no body. The Second Amendment says shall not be infringed, period.
Well,
Now,
the important thing about the Second Amendment, though, you have to remember you're talking about the right of the people versus the right of the militia. When that was written, the militia and the people were really one and the same.
Frontier militia.
still are.
Indians, bandits. You know,
And the militia and the people still are one and the
Sure.
same. The military, the professional military, is a separate thing from the militia.
Absolutely.
No, absolutely.
Patrick and I are in Georgia. As Georgians, the law here says that every able-bodied man between the ages of 16 and 60 can be called up to the state militia at any time. Most people don't even know that, but that is the
Yeah.
truth. I mean,
That's not surprising in the least. I think one of the things to go back, even if if it comes down to a grammar issue in how the Second Amendment's worded, if you look at the concept behind it, the fact that they're referencing a militia is only due to the fact that the individuals that are granted those liberties are the ones that would comprise a militia. You don't have a designated representation or a designated right that is afforded to a militia. You have it afforded to the individuals because those individuals would comprise those militias.
correct.
Right.
Now, let's move on to the second favorite anti-gun argument of the left. Well, the founders weren't thinking about AK-47s, and they always say AK-47s like that's the scariest gun out there, which, wow, does that tell me about a grossly undereducated group of gun grabbers. They don't even know about the material that they have no education on the subject matter.
It's probably an attempt by them to paint us as more of an enemy to the public. Because what do you always see bad guys in movies using, or what do you see in the news when you see any terrorist group or anything like that? The infamous AK-47.
Well, and the reason that you see the AK-47 is because it was just a brilliantly designed weapon. Totally dependent on any condition you can throw at it.
Yeah, and it was mass-produced and distributed amongst several different areas.
Where's the safety?
Sure.
Where's the safety? His gun is not safe.
I like some Russian logic.
I love
Yeah,
the Russians.
I've got a sort of a cousin of the AK-47 I've acquired over recent years was a Yugoslavian variant of the SKS, which I thoroughly enjoy. It was actually kind of funny because it's got the grenade launcher on the end of it. You know, you got to get the dummy round and everything like that. When I got it, I was explaining to the wife about is that a silencer on the end of it? And I said, no, it's not. I mean, I know it kind of looks like a muzzle brake and everything, but it's actually a grenade launcher. It's a what? I said, yeah, 22 millimeter stim grenade. You have to get a dummy round and boom, you launch it and everything. That's what this whole sight thing is for. And she was like, why would you want a grenade launcher on a gun? And without even missing a beat, why not?
Why would you want cheese on a burger? I mean, why would you want wheels on a car?
Right. I mean, I'm not saying I'm going to use that, but it's a bonus.
I mean, shit. But anyway, back to that argument. One of the favorite arguments of the left. Well, the founders didn't have these newer automatic weapons in mind and all that stuff. Oh, really? Okay. So if the right of the people to keep and bear arms does not extend to weapons not yet conceived of at the time of the signing, then the right of free speech and the freedom of the press cannot extend to broadcast television or radio, or certainly not to internet publications or Facebook. The Fourth Amendment, likewise, cannot protect you from wiretaps, email confiscation, or cell phone data collections. The right to an attorney cannot exist. Gays cannot marry. There's no welfare state, no drinking age, no women's suffrage, and the slaves would still be slaves. But the forefathers, they couldn't possibly have been thinking forward enough to conceive of more deadly weapons.
Yeah.
They rather glaringly omitted any reference to the lethality of the weapon in concern with the passage of the Second Amendment, with the drafting of the Second Amendment. So yeah, if we have to think about the development of the technology, then no, the Fourth Amendment does not protect your cell phone from data collection or your emails from collection, or even fucking. We could be having telephone conversations across soup cans with a string, and that would be technology beyond the scope of what the founders were capable of conceiving, if in fact it were the case that they could not have thought of the machine guns when developing the Second Amendment.
I mean, but there's no. It's ridiculous to listen to people talk about the implementation of technology and to expect the founding fathers to have predicted every technological revelation that's going to occur from then to our current period of technological revelation. It's like me writing a document now, expecting it to be applicable 150 years in the future.
You know, interesting thing about that, old people, long time ago, did figure some shit out. In fact, they figured out a lot of shit. Was it Heraclitus that first asserted atomic theory? That's what you call an ancient Greek.
A little more up to date.
Democritus. I'm sorry. Democritus was the ancient Greek philosopher that spoke of the atom, the uncuttable.
Let me run this one past you.
All right.
About 1810, during the Napoleonic Wars, the Austrian army against Napoleon featured a weapon called a Windbush rifle. It may not have been a rifle, but it was a Windbush. It was an air gun that fired a 60 caliber pellet that could pierce a wood block at 200 yards. It fired 15 shots. Chris, that's spelled Windbusche. Now, my point is, they had a multi-shot silent weapon that was the terror of Napoleon's troops. That's a pretty advanced piece of technology. if the founding fathers, most of whom were still alive, wanted to limit guns, they could have done so right then and there.
Yep.
Sure they could have, but they didn't.
Okay? They also had multi-shot, something like a machine gun. I forgot the name of it, but it was a kind of a weapon that could shoot numerous shots, one after the other. This was around in the 1790s. They could have limited guns back then. They didn't. Now the point is, it was not about technology or technological changes. It was about the basic premise that a population had to be as well or better armed than the government which purported to lead them.
See, and that's what they forget. Oh, well, where do you draw the line? Citizens don't need tanks or atomic. Oh, yeah, we actually do, because if our government becomes too tyrannical and needs to be overthrown, as the founders suggested we should do from time to time, God forbid we should ever go 20 years without such a revolution. It was said that the tree of liberty on occasion must be watered with the blood of patriots and tyrants. And that's the point, is that the citizenry must be armed sufficiently to overthrow the government in order to balance the growth of that power to guarantee liberty going forward.
I mean, it's complexing to me that people actually think it's a legitimate argument to say that when the founding fathers wrote the Second Amendment, that they couldn't have predicted the advancement in weapons technology and how it would apply into the future. But even if you look at applying that to technology now, the weapons that we have that are so often debated, specifically AR-15s, 30-round magazines, high-capacity magazines or Betamax, stuff like that. Even with all that in effect, if you look at what local governments at the state, at the county level are arming themselves with, and you're trying to tell me that you're going to organize a militia that's going to effectively take over control from these individuals that have decided to enforce their will upon the populace. Have you seen any of this stuff? You've got people that are on SWAT teams or special response teams or whatever they're coded in their counties that are driving around the same shit Chris and I were rolling around in Afghanistan in 2010 with. Why the hell does a police department need a MATV or an LAV or anything like that? Like, to protect and serve. Where the hell does that involve having MATVs? What enemy do we have on domestic soil that's so bad that you need to roll around like that?
Let me give you an alternative. Today in Europe, in Sweden and in Germany and in France and in England, you have an unarmed population. And I also hear on YouTube and I read in the papers about these very same people being terrorized by an invading population that they feel helpless to defend themselves against. The police will not do anything about it. The European military is non-existent, so these people are basically held hostage to a bunch of Brussels bureaucrats. That's the danger of an unarmed population. They can fall for anything.
I mean, I'm not saying unarm the population. Any means necessary.
Why not? That's what Hillary says. You think I'm kidding? These are the same people who said that there had been no attack on American soil comparable to 9/11. They conveniently forgot about the Barbary pirates, and they forgot about the, 200 years of terrorism that this country fought. They were called the Indians. The Indians were not nice, gentle nature people. If they caught you and the settlers and pioneers of the 1850s would testify to this. They would torture you terribly. If you were lucky, you were killed in the initial skirmish.
Yeah. Watch Bone Tomahawk.
One of my ancestors was named Solomon Litton. His family was massacred in New York in the 1790s. He ran back 200 miles to escape. I don't know what happened to his family, but I don't think it was a good thing. For many, many, many years, this country had Indians, and we had the Spanish and the Mexicans on the southern border, the French, the English. Every time you turned around, the frontiersmen had to be armed and ready at any moment's notice, because death was just around the corner. The idea of the unarmed population would never have even occurred to them.
No, and that became synonymous with the development of our cultural identity at that time, because we were trailblazing in a sense, and we had to be prepared to deal with whatever we had to. I think the issue now is we went from a society of people that were looking at expanding horizons and developing and doing these great big things to a society of people that would rather be fed and caged like flock animals.
We let John Lennon take over.
No, yeah, I mean, and
it sounds funny, but it's really awful when you really think about it in depth. Since the 1960s, the John Lennon generation, i.e. Hillary Clinton and her ilk, have been running the show. She's from that era, and she sucked on that poison. It defines her. She is a well-dressed 1960s hippie liberal who now wants to tell you how to run your life.
Yeah.
Yeah, and going back to the whole Lennon comment, it goes even back farther than that. I mean, you can see examples of that kind of that breakdown of society to where the government becomes stronger than its citizenry. You know, and one of the greatest examples is China in the late 20s.
Sure.
They all, they said, hey, we're going to take in this new collective idea. Chairman Mao is just this wonderful guy. Yeah, look, here's what we're going to do. You just give us all your guns. We'll take care of you. And the people were like, oh, okay, sure, no problem. Here.
Yeah, why would I ever need to fear the government?
Yeah, and then what was it?
Yeah, we're in a hell.
It was like over the next 6 years, like 2-something million people were massacred because they were labeled political dissidents.
Your timeline's a little off, but your general purpose is, we get it. Mao had his 100 Flowers campaign.
Yeah.
Every time the population is disarmed, you get some cuckoo in charge who says, I got a better idea, and if you don't agree with me, well, I'll just liquidate you. And they've done it again and again and again.
Now, real quick, Cody used those famous words earlier, protect and serve. Now, back in '99, the Supreme Court actually ruled that police officers do not have any constitutional duty to protect citizens.
It's a
the only
citizen's
duty they have is to solve
responsibility.
crimes.
It's a citizen's responsibility to protect themselves.
Right.
Well, and that's an interesting part of the conversation there too. It is when we're arguing gun control, if the Supreme Court is going to hold that the police do not have a duty to protect us, but the left wants to argue that we don't need guns because we have the police, where does the cycle of madness end?
With me in Montana, in the hills, living the way that I want
to. I used to live in a commune. We had swords, not guns.
Swords are for men. You use guns to kill off vermin.
Guns work pretty well for killing men, too.
Well, I wouldn't know.
You're missing my point.
I've only ever shot vermin with guns.
No.
Yeah.
You're missing my point.
No.
What I'm saying is, you're in a war, you're going to kill them. But if you're in If I fight Chris with a sword, that's a fight of honor. We'll probably, stop at first blood. Or if we don't, if he kills me or if I kill him, it's a duel of honor. Honor is, guns are not honor. Guns are just killing. That's it. When you pull out a gun, you pull it out to kill somebody.
Like I said, I've only ever used them to exterminate vermin.
Well,
It's
there you go.
it's definitely based on the intent of the person wielding whatever weapon. A weapon is nothing more than a tool, and it's a way for somebody to extend their beliefs into a physical arena.
Well, don't get me wrong. I got a combat action badge exterminating vermin.
I didn't get mine. I don't. So, yeah, right there.
Doesn't matter. The medals don't make the man.
No, they make promotion points.
All right. Well, you know what? They can keep their damn promotions.
Hey, he's got the most medals. They're so pretty.
I'm suspicious of somebody that has a lot of medals in
20
all
years
functioning
running
limbs.
around the Middle East, and what have we got to show for it? A bunch of young men and women with missing arms and legs and shattered lives.
Oh, yeah.
Now,
Well,
our administration wants to take us back to Libya, and let's go face the Russians in Syria. Oh, that's a good idea.
because it's worked so well before.
It's because it makes money.
And there you go, and there's the
What's
point.
your leg worth? What are your balls worth? Because those are the first thing to go when an IED hits you.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But that's the thing is everybody, and this is something I was talking about in my counterterrorism class the other day, because everybody is trying to look at the morality of war and everything like that. And I was like, the morality of war went out the door a long fucking time ago when people figured out that we could make money from going to war and that we were good at it, damn good at it. And the issue that we have is the influence that money has in our political process. That didn't used to be there. The establishment of this country was based on government as a need for the people, not a profit mechanism to be used to catapult people.
Don't kid yourself.
100 years at least.
Money and power have always been bedfellows, and they always will be. They cannot help but be.
Now, Chris has got a point there. You remember the Spanish-American War? William Randolph Hearst, yellow journalism?
Mm-hmm.
He pushed that war real hard. I guess there was money to be made with those sugar colonies in Spain and in the Philippines, in Cuba and the Philippines. Well, that was the 1890s.
Yep. And by that point, it had already spun out of control.
So what you're really talking about then is looking back 130 years. Well, where do you stop?
Well, and it really doesn't, and that's sort of the point. It comes to a point where it becomes a perfection, like a perfected tool, like it did with World War II and the IRS, where they had the IRS generating this taxable, taking in the taxable revenue, they called it, in an effort to support the war effort. And then it was supposed to have gone away once the war was over. But then they saw, hey, wait, we can make a bunch of money with this.
But you've got a cross purposes going now. These days, you have a endlessly grabbing IRS and regulatory system at the same time as you have a corporate system that can't be touched, which means that weight of the IRS falls entirely on the middle class, and the weight of recruiting falls entirely on the lower class. So
and it's interesting to this juncture too. The IRS now has its own police force.
Well, there you go. Because they can't collect the money from the Walmarts of the world. All these giant corporations have trillions of dollars in overseas assets and deposits. You're not going to be able to collect it from them, which means they have to come after you. Ergo, they need for guns. How much of your income are they collecting in taxes?
Well, this is going to shock Chris if he can hear me, but I'm living in the wonderful state of Maryland now. And
I'm not shocked at all.
dude, work to pay bills and then I'm getting the hell away from this existence that they call a state. But it's that bad. But
Come on south, boy.
Well, I'll be back.
Oh, hell, I'm going to drag Chris up to the northwest.
yeah,
Yeah, but Cody, you looked a little perplexed when I was talking about the IRS having its own police force.
yeah. Why does the IRS need a police force?
Well, thanks, Obama.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Why do we
I
need
think.
czars?
Yeah,
Look
I
at
think
the
it's the
prospect of a country, the United States, supposedly a republic, where every president feels obliged to appoint a dozen, 2 dozen, 5 dozen, literally called czar.
Mhm.
What is a czar? It's an autocrat taken from Russian history. An autocrat operates without rules, regulations, laws. Does whatever he wants under the aegis of government power.
There's no reason to have something that exists like that in a constitutional framework society.
No, there's not. But we've been moving away from that for so long, and it's been carefully spun and a very well orchestrated move where, because everybody saw in the news that, there was this whole manufactured crisis about ammo shortage, gun shortage, but that the government was buying up tons of ammunition. Why are they buying up so much ammo? Well, it's because Obama's executive actions and policies that he's put in place has created, I want to say, within a half a dozen federal agencies who you would never, ever think need any kind of military equipment. Everything from body armor to assault rifles to tanks.
Well, here's
Like
the
the
funny
IRA.
thing. There's a flip side to look at that. All of those IRS guys with their body armor and tanks, I don't know what they're thinking, because someday they have to go home again.
Yeah.
How do you go home again if all of your ex-neighbors think of you as the enemy? You will never sleep safe again. So
You
what
won't
have you
sleep.
gained?
You'll be dead.
Yeah.
So what have you gained?
And it's
Bureaucrats at the IRS can't be that stupid. They have to realize that if they play hotshot SWAT guy now, there's going to be, even if no one attacks them 5 years later, their neighbors will spit on their shadow. Who'd want to live that kind of life?
Greedy, money-hungry cretins.
Where do you spend the money?
Well, I mean, at that point, that would require neighbors, which would be constituted as citizens, to actually stand up for something. And quite frankly, America lost its spine after the 50s.
Okay, so you're the IRS guy. Somebody gave you $100,000 of blood money. Now you're retired, and you want to go spend your money and live in peace and relative comfort in your retirement pension. And your neighbors all look at you, and you can see the look in their eyes that says, you're a bully, you're always a bully, I don't want my daughter to marry your son, I don't want to be your neighbor, I'm not going to invite you to the neighborhood barbecue, go to hell. That's at a best case scenario.
Yeah. But I
Worst
mean,
case scenario, somebody puts freaking antifreeze in your Kool-Aid and you die. What good does it do you to be a bully for the IRS?
it doesn't. But
Bullies never
again,
sleep well at night.
the type of people that would stand up and do something about anything like that have gone to the wayside. When they decided to implement all these systems and make all these changes so that they could set up these different committees and departments and bureaus and all this massive overcomplication of simply taking care of the people around you, people got so used to being fed that they forgot how to hunt.
I didn't. Chris didn't.
Nope.
Maybe you didn't either.
No.
Actually, that reminds me. I've got a newspaper article I've got to write about. What am I writing about this month? I don't know what I'm writing about for this upcoming month.
I'm going to jump in for just a quick second because I've really enjoyed the talk and everything like that, but that's about the 15th time I've been kicked off of this broadcast, so I'm going to take a hint and call it a night. But good talking with you guys, and we'll see you again soon.
Well, Patrick, before you sign off, let me just say for posterity, this has been especially interesting. I've got 3 different guys here who have never met each other before. Only by chance last week, Byrne was here and Patrick wasn't. Patrick does the show with me almost every Friday night. But here I've got 3 guys from 3 very different parts of my life. Patrick from before I was enlisted. Byrne was with me during my training at the Language Institute, and Cody was stationed with me in Hawaii. And we actually didn't work in the same places together in Afghanistan, but we deployed together to Afghanistan and did some of the train-up piece. We spent 3 months dicking around between fucking Ali al-Salim and
our actual regions.
Yeah.
They couldn't have handled us in one province, Chris. We would have killed every bad guy out there.
No. We landed in Kuwait. We landed in civilian clothes. Now, John, you remember what I used to look like on off-duty hours? My khaki shorts and my Hawaiian shirt and my flip-flops. Yeah. My pork pie hat.
Well, that ridiculous thing.
That's how we landed in Kuwait. Not uniforms, no sir. I was in khaki shorts, a Hawaiian shirt, flip-flops with my M16 in a pine box walking through the airport in Kuwait.
Yeah, that wasn't a weird day at all.
No.
I was wondering if we were going to get waxed in the fucking airport.
Yeah, nothing bizarre about that shit, walking around with our guns in the airport like that. Got off the airplane, walked up to a Starbucks, ordered a cup of hot black coffee, because I don't drink anything but hot black coffee and cold, clear water. No soda pop bullshit. Glass of whole milk. All right. But I get my cup of coffee. You know, we'd been on the flight for fucking ever. We were over 24 hours in transit between layovers and everything. We get off the bird in Kuwait. I go grab a cup of coffee at a Starbucks, no shit, and walk outside. A couple of the privates are with me. I light up my cigarette. It's 135 degrees. Standing in a black parking lot with not a spot of shade to be seen. And most of the privates that had walked outside to get a cigarette with me immediately turned around to go back into the AC. I'm standing there with my cup of hot-ass coffee and my cigarette. You lack determination, boys.
You better get used to it, because that's what it's going to be for the next 6 months or a year or whatever it is. Suck it up, man.
Light up, Junior. This is acclimatization. It's part of the process.
This is about as good as it's going to get for the next year.
Yep. I tell you what, though, something your Joe on the street just doesn't know. One of those, how many vets does it take to change a light bulb? You don't know. You weren't there. Well, yeah, that's pretty much it. Because fucking, if you've never been there, one of the things that you're not tracking is it may be 135 degrees in the middle of the day. It's 35 degrees in the middle of the night. And 35 degrees when it's between 70 and 80 all the time, that's one thing.
Yeah.
When you've been in 135, when you're talking about a 100-degree swing from sun up to sun gone, that's fucking cold.
Dude, I remember sitting under a Humvee, cuddled up with Parks, Ritter, Reef, Pelt, and Ocampo, because it was 48 degrees. We were in heavy sleeping bags because it was just such a shock to your system after being in 115, 120 degree heat all day.
Poor Ocampo, man, he looked rough when we came back.
Dude, him and Pelt got hit a lot. Like, we're real lucky that they made it back.
Yeah. And as I understand it, they were under some bizarre, super strict freaking ROE.
Yeah, the whole province of Marja under the Marine control was kind of stupid. Parks and I ran off of our initial ROE that we were briefed up in the KIFC, and what we did when we went into our areas and we're talking with commanders is we briefed them on our ROE for engaging, just so that they knew, hey, we'll work with you guys, but we have our own ROE that's coming out of support. And it was never an issue for us. And a lot of the associations that we developed with specific types of units, mostly scout sniper platoons, it allowed us to operate with them a lot better than the radio battalion counterparts that we had, because they were restricted to some pretty stupid ROEs just to keep political shit from happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I did a lot of work with the 101st before the RIP, and those guys, they were some lean, mean murder machines, man. Fucking LT Ficken used to he'd come and wake me up sometimes. I'll never forget one morning he comes in and shakes me. It's 2:30 in the morning. He comes in and shakes me in my chew. Hey, Lowry, Sir Lowry, we've been playing fucking Call of Duty all night, getting kind of edgy. Think you can find us some bad guys? I said, Roger that, LT. Why don't you go start a pot of coffee? I'll get my pants on. We'll go kill some bad guys. Who needs sleep? It's dark. Let's get some work done.
It's the best time to get work done.
Oh, yeah.
Put the nods on, boys.
Okay. Let me run some past you.
All right.
The little darlings followed us back. There's now, I don't know, millions of them in Europe. What should we do with them?
Ours?
I'm glad you asked, because that's what I was talking about earlier, and that's what I want to talk about now. And I would like to talk about this next week on the show, hopefully with the rest of the Brushfire Mind available.
We need about a half a dozen guys here, because this is a critical question. Now, supposedly, it's not at our level to be discussing this. Then again, maybe it's entirely at our level, because if the politicians won't handle it, it comes down to, well, in Germany and in England and France and Sweden, it's default to them. What are they going to do? What are we going to do? The way I see it, it's all, all the Europeans are going to be looking over the pond and saying, well, what are the Americans doing? We can't do anything because Merkel is taking her marching orders from Obama, and Obama is taking his marching orders from who knows what. There's not going to be a change until 6 months from now.
Nah, they're dragging feet intentionally. Everybody's kind of waiting for that initial reaction for any of the properly developed countries to weigh in on the situation.
Yes. Now, here's what I see as probably one of the largest problems we face presently with that threat. When Cody and I were fighting the jihadist threat, we were fighting, at that time, we were still fighting an asymmetric war. An asymmetric war means this.
Guerrillas versus soldiers.
Basically. So, traditional war involves two defined territories, and no matter what the politics say, no matter whose money, religion, blah, 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 whatever, at the end of the day, what's happening is one land full of people abutted to another land full of people intends to take control of the other land full of people. And the war is won when a soldier the war is won when a soldier with a gun stands on ground and says, "You shall not pass," and is willing to put a bullet in a man to make that true.
I'll be right back. Man.
Cody,
Okay.
what size rounds are those behind you?
Oh, looks like I don't know, maybe.
That's an interesting background. Anyway, so
Amorphous war is you're a regular Joe civilian walking on to get to your subway train, and some jackass who thinks he is out to win Germany for for Islam jumps out and stabs you in the chest with his homemade switchblade. No battle lines, no defined armies, no uniforms, no generals. I don't know, man. It's just blood against blood at that point. At that point, it's a war of spirits.
Asymmetric war.
What do you got?
With asymmetric war, you're talking about guerrillas. You're talking about
Viet Cong, Hajis, whatever.
Right, but the thing is, with these soldiers, with these guerrilla warriors, even if they're not what we would consider professional,
little fuckers are tough.
Military, even if they're not what you would call professional organized military, the asymmetric warrior, the guerrilla warrior, is still a soldier and a warrior. Now we're into amorphous war. What that means is this. It is not the Nation of Islam. It is not the State of Islam. It is not the people of Islam. It is not a race of people. It is not a nationality of people. It is literally Islam that is attacking. The nature of an amorphous warfare is the problem of fighting the body snatchers. Think back to science fiction, stories like the Puppet Masters.
Yeah, you don't know who's who. I get it, Chris.
Any person you know could have been radicalized in one way or another.
Well, that's just what I said. It's
a
war of spirits.
Among us.
Will the spirit to preserve Europe be stronger than the spirit to destroy it? That's it.
And what you were talking about with the guy on the subway stabbing you in the chest, that's right in line with what I'm talking about, but I want to make this distinction. With the asymmetric warfare, you have people being trained to conduct attacks. The difference between that and amorphous warfare is when you are radicalizing existing members of the local populace, you eliminate the logistics and supply chain demands of supplying and maneuvering your soldiers into that position. Instead, you are literally reaching into your enemy and converting their people. I mean, you could go to a frickin' Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game and start talking about the evil wizard that uses mind control to turn.
I don't think so, Chris. I don't think you can turn the average civilian into the average Haji, or the average 25-year-old so-called refugee. They're not going to convert.
It doesn't have to be average, John, because when you consider that the statistics tell us that about 15 to 20% of Muslims are radicalized and 50% support the radicalized 20%, we're talking about nearly 2 billion people. So when you start talking about 10 to 20% of that number, you're speaking of a militarized force that is roughly half the size of the United States population. That is significant.
Okay, but your statistics are not good.
Yeah, there's going to be no way to determine an accurate statistic for something like that.
That's why we say between 10 and 20%.
Okay.
Even there.
Let's take your 10
and 20%. That's a pretty big window. That's a pretty big window. But if it's 1%,
even if it is 1%.
Chris, let's take your 10. Let's take 10% of a billion large population of Muslims. That's 100 million people.
1.8 billion. Nearly 2 billion people.
Okay, I've heard the number is about 1 billion. You say it's 1.8? Okay, let's say it's 1.8. That's 180 million people who are ready, willing, and able to pull the trigger. I get it. How many of them are where they can hurt you, i.e. in Europe and in America? 10%? 18 million? Okay. How many of those 18 million are still ready, willing, and able to pull the trigger? Probably 10% of that. So you're talking about a so-called fighting population of maybe 2 million people. Now you can't pick out the combative types from the non-combative types. What do you get? The same situation as Serbia had. Since they could not tell the goodies from the baddies, they just had to get rid of them all. We are facing the same problem that Serbia was facing, that our politicians have delivered into our laps. We all try to pretend to be Mr. Nice Guy, we're going to open our doors to the good Muslims, blah, blah, blah. But since you cannot tell the difference between them, the average Joe, it's going to work out to be ethnic cleansing. Really, if you're talking amorphous war, I don't see any way other than ethnic cleansing. And it doesn't have to be genocide. Just, you kick them out and say, there's the door, Joe. That you can prevent your own population from being displaced or executed.
There's, with liberty, the type of liberty that we have is, I believe we share a pretty similar view of what that is. There is an inherent risk that is associated with maintaining that liberty for a group of people. And part of that inherent risk is having to deal with any selected group that's going to threaten that liberty from a member of any of the population. But the issue with the amorphous war, when it comes into the terms of what do you do with Muslim refugees, you filter, honestly, the answer is you filter and you deal with what happens.
Why bother? Is it worth it? To save, two good Muslims, is it worth it to take a chance with one bad one? Tamerlane and the other fellow, the Sarnia brothers. Okay, these guys, when they came over, they were so-called harmless 15-year-olds. Why? They had these gentle little lamb eyes that wouldn't hurt anybody. They just want a chance. They got their chance. They got their little fingers burned. They didn't get what they thought they wanted, so they turned radical. These were the sons of moderate Muslims who were refugees from Chechnya, from Russia. The Russians advised the FBI, don't trust these Chechens, they're bad guys. The Americans, with their open hearts, insisted upon believing that all men are created equal, even if they're not born American. Therefore, we have to pretend that they're good guys until proven otherwise.
Right.
Was it worth it?
Until proven guilty.
Okay, in order to bring over the Sarnaev parents, they had to take a chance with the Sarnaev sons, who wound up killing 80 people. Was it worth it? I'd say no.
I'd agree. I have to agree with you on that.
Get rid of them. I don't need
No,
they don't improve my country enough to make it worth it.
I don't know, because then you have to look at excluding somebody, a percentage of your population that selects the Muslim faith.
I don't need to execute anybody.
No, you have to exclude them. You have to remove them from the situation. That's not how that works.
What do you think George Washington did? Were you familiar that George Washington, even before the French and Indian War in about 1757, he had an incident where he and a group of militia members went into an Indian village, they attacked it, and then they burned all the crops so the Indians there would starve to death. It's in George Washington's memoirs.
Yeah.
Now, these days, George Washington would be considered a war criminal for that. Back then, that was called survival.
Right.
You know?
But to a certain extent, if you're looking at the morality associated with the actions of people as they're expanding the basis of their country versus the morality of a well-developed society that has become the imminent superpower within the global community, we
Stop right there. Who needs this global community? I don't need it. It doesn't make my life any better. It doesn't pay for my meal at a restaurant. Protecting Lebanon or protecting Somalia does not put food on my table. It doesn't do me any benefit at all. Who the hell needs a global community? I don't need to be part of the UN. I really don't. Chris served, you served, I served. Did it really help you to go out and save the Iraqis from themselves? They didn't want to be saved.
no, and
If
that's
they wanted to be saved, they'd have picked up a rifle and did it themselves.
right. And that's a lot of the issue that you're running into with Syria is you've got a population
Where's
that's
the Free
being
Syrian Army? I'll tell you where they are. The Free Syrian Army is in France raping French girls.
Yeah. John's gotten incensed. Let him go.
Yeah, I mean it's
I'm not even near incensed as the French and the Germans are. They can't. They have been so wimpified by 50 years of socialism and liberalism and political correctness. Their country has been stolen from them. So by God, yes, I'm incensed because I refuse to let my country go that way. And if I could, hell, instead of running off to Syria or Iraq, I'd like to go off to Germany or France and fight these fuckers. There's millions of me and Chris's and yous who would do the same thing. Instead of going off to Libya or Syria, why aren't we going to defend our allies? Crazy idea, I know.
But I mean, even if you look at the position of removing yourself from the global community, then you isolate yourself from your allies and you wouldn't provide support to them either.
No. Pakistan is not my ally, it never was.
Not Pakistan, but if you isolate yourself from the global community as a country and you provide no support to any sort of global crisis or any sort of issue in any other country except for ours, that's going to be a completely different society than what we have now. And we can look at ideals as much as we want to and say, I wish it was this way or it should be this way, but the issue at hand is dealing with what we have in front of us.
Okay, what we have in front of us is a country with bases in 140 foreign countries. We can't turn left or right without getting involved in a war somewhere.
Right.
I don't know, it's a crazy idea, but maybe we ought to start picking and choosing our friends and allies and our enemies better. I guess it's called discretion.
Well, to a certain extent, a result of it is due to our involvement in those areas to start with.
Yeah, that's right. We're fighting because we're there. We're there because we're fighting. It's circular.
Well, there was an article that was on SoftRap on Facebook that was talking about how U.S. allies are now fighting CIA-backed insurgent groups.
Yeah.
In Syria.
There you go. The left hand is fighting the right hand.
Exactly. Now, I definitely agree to a large extent we need to withdraw our interaction in other countries just solely based off of the fact that you need a population that's going to be motivated to provide for itself. If you keep feeding them over and over and over and over again, they're never going to want to learn how to feed themselves.
That's right.
Now, granted, you have resistance groups that are in these areas that have been documented and have been put up in the news, like the Kurds, or you get a lot of the female fighters that were tired of being rape victims that have decided to stand up and fight.
Gabel, I think it's called, the YPG.
Right.
The guys that actually wore the shit.
Right. Those guys are a population that, given the circumstances of what opposition they are facing, I could get behind backing up. I have a really hard time.
That's their country. Now my country is under threat. I can't run off to join the YPG because I got to worry about my own backyard now.
Right.
My backyard is Germany or France or America.
Okay.
Okay, I got no problem with the Kurds. They're brave people, and I wish them well.
Right.
But I'm more worried about France and Germany and Sweden.
Right.
And if that means that I have to kick out poor little Ahmed and Fatima, and they have to go back to Somalia, tough shit. Because at the end of the day, in the year 2050, I want there to be a Sweden, and that's more important to me than worrying about little Ahmed or Fatima. I don't know. Balance the two. Feel sorry for a refugee today, or wonder what happened to Sweden 20
There's
years
always
ago.
somebody to feel sorry for.
What's that?
There's always somebody to feel sorry
That's
for.
right. I feel sorry for my people. Period. This world is heading towards hardcore nationalism. I did not pick this world. I didn't wake up and say, I want to reinvent politics. It was dropped on me. All I can do is take my situations as I have them. Well, okay. So now what I have to do? Best I can do is worry about me and mine. Now, ultimately, we are all kind of like a Venn diagram. We go from ourselves to our family, to our community, to our country, to our community of nations. Well, in my community of nations, France and Germany are closer to my heart than Somalia. I am not a globalist, and I am not a humanist. I'm a freaking European. If my people go in Europe, I'm not soon after. And the same for you, Chris. What do you think happens if Germany and France and Sweden are gone? What happens to your children?
Well,
yeah. We need France and Germany and Sweden.
Yes. They're the new Georgia.
Okay.
Once upon a while ago, this little place called Georgia was founded, and it was built and filled with debtors because the Spanish in Florida were an active and viable threat. So you take the crazy Irish debtors.
Yeah, the refugees.
Mad-eyed monsters.
The throwaways of Europe, I know.
And you park them in Georgia.
And they fought like mad devils for as long and hard as they could.
Well, France and Germany are our Georgia now.
Well, it may be that we have to, I don't know, I mean, I want an administration that looks across the pond to Europe, not to Africa. I don't even care if the guy's a black guy, because even if he's a black American, he speaks English, he wears European clothes, he comes from a European-based culture. Europe is closer to him than Africa is. So for a black guy or a Chinese guy, whatever, to be looking back to, the homeland, culturally, his homeland is Europe. We have got to protect them. They are our whether the French speak well of us or not, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, because we're stuck with each other, culturally. We need the French. And we need the Swedes. Yes, they've fallen on some pretty despicable times now. Yes, the average Swede is not worth a shit. Nevertheless, we have to preserve them as much as we can. Because that's part of our heritage. My heritage is not in Somalia. And if we let the lowest common denominator, all people are wonderful and blah, 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 and all this, if you have this cultural relativism where Somalia is held to be equal to Sweden, then everything falls to the level of Somalia. And we all starve.
Well, I mean, how do you compare in a society the worth of one heritage over another?
Simple. Europeans grew the world's population from 1 billion in 1800 to 7 billion in 200 years. That was European culture and technology and organization that did it. It was not Somali culture. You get rid of Europe, and you kill 6 billion people. I'm just looking at historical fact and be objective. Okay, there are some great cultures. The Chinese, the Japanese, are fantastic people. I give this also to the Japanese and the Chinese. They look after their own. The Japanese are very monocultural. The Chinese, you don't see them opening their doors to a bunch of Arab refugees. They worked this one out a long time ago. You look after your own first, and then, and far down the line, you can start thinking about helping somebody else out. But you sure as hell don't do it by opening your doors to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. You don't do that. There's also there is, I don't know, looking at it objectively, what has the Middle East brought the world versus what has Western culture brought the world?
Algebra?
No, the Arabs took that from the Greeks.
That was the Europeans.
They stole that from the Greeks. Retranslated it and said,
That's not what they teach in
they
school.
plagiarized algebra. No. Okay, let's just pretend. How many cars come from the Middle East?
None that I'm aware of.
How many airplanes are built there?
None
How
that I'm
many
aware of.
rocket ships are coming out of Saudi Arabia?
Computers.
How much
Telephones,
medicine is coming out of there?
Cattle.
What has the Middle East produced in the past 50 years of free money? They've had 50 years of free money from oil. What have they produced with it?
Oil.
Okay, what do they buy with that oil? Nothing. So, even if, looking at it objectively, and also recognizing that, I don't know, if Europe goes, then I'm not long after, I choose to help Europe.
No, I agree completely. I think I don't think you go far enough with the question there. I mean,
I don't.
What have we done in the last 50 years? Let me ask you this question: what of value has come out of the Middle East in ever?
That's what Ariana Falaci said.
So, I'm trying to think of how to phrase this or articulate it. So if you have an area of turmoil like the Middle East that for the last 2,000 years has been ravaged by differences based mostly off of a religious belief, if you were to somehow alleviate that situation, what could they produce in the next 100 years or the next 200 years?
I don't know because they're saddled with Islam.
Say that again?
I don't know. An Arab mind is not less than a European mind, but they are saddled from childhood with Islam. It is a religion which brainwashes them and causes them not to question, not to rationalize, but to accept and submit. A mind that never does anything but submit and accept and parrot. A 2,000-year-old mentality will never advance. There's a very good reason why they've invented nothing in 2,000 years.
One of the things that Cody and I talked about before.
What?
One of the things that Cody and I have talked about before, and I'm pretty sure you and I have had this conversation once or twice too, John.
Yeah.
The Afghanis I dealt with, and I dealt with some good guys. I dealt with some Afghanis that were pretty decent guys.
Okay.
The ones I dealt with that were really good guys were actually American citizens who were.
They came back.
Well, yeah, they were natural-born Afghanis.
Okay.
Who became American citizens
and then they
went
came
back and joined the Afghan National Army.
There you go.
So they could fight for their homeland to try and to help us fend off the Taliban.
Fine.
Well, I might add, their families lived here.
Right.
Okay.
So
you're really talking about long run? If you really want to save the Middle East, you'd have to take all the Muslims who have been pseudo westernized and inject them back into the Middle East.
Yes, absolutely.
And say, colonize.
The only way that you're going to be able to take a population and create a population that is going to stand up for themselves, to develop themselves beyond the 2,000-year-old rhetoric of kill anything that is different from what you are, is by exposure to something else. And that's not going to happen without involvement. That's the issue.
So take all these Muslims out of the Middle East and give them their own little Europeanized new Islamistan, where they have some kind of connection to Western culture and organization. They'll take over. And they will probably advance
logistically, how do you put that together?
Kick them out.
Kick them out of what?
Out of Europe and out of America.
Where are you going to put them?
Serious. All the Muslims in Dearborn, all the Muslims in Stockholm and Paris, guess what, boys? We are going to fund you. We're going to send you off to Islamic Liberia.
Yeah, see,
so you expose somebody to liberty only to take it away from them?
No. There was a country called Liberia.
Hold on.
Liberia was founded by.
Let's go back to this piece of the issue real quick. We keep hearing all this stuff about how we need to take in these refugees and these poor people. But hold on a minute. We keep hearing all this stuff about, these poor people, they don't have anywhere to go, we need to take in these refugees. There are actually several very wealthy nations that are already Islamic nations right there in the Middle East. Yep. Why are not they taking in the refugees?
Because of the plan.
That's what we were talking about before, the amorphous warfare.
That's right.
This wave of refugees, this refugee movement, this is an amorphous combat maneuver.
Yes, it is. It is a planned displacement of European people in favor of a Muslim population that the elite thinks that they can manipulate to their benefit. I think it's a very short-sighted one. If these elite, which include Francois Hollande and Cameron and Merkel, think that they're going to displace the European population and somehow get an advantage because they've displaced all the Europeans in favor of Muslims, that's not going to work out well for them.
I don't know if it's so much, well...
You read the postings they've written. Sarkozy, Merkel, and a woman named Barbara Specter have stated explicitly on the internet that that's exactly what they want to do. If you want to write some notes, and I'll give you the information. You can look it up yourself.
Oh, no, I know what you're talking about. Oh, shit, I am still recording. I didn't mean to do that.
I don't... So when Chris and I were deployed, and this is, I guess, where some of the stuff stems from, when we were deployed, we had to interact with a culture that didn't necessarily even understand what we were, who we came, what we represented as Americans in that area, providing support to that area. You had people that didn't even understand why we were there.
Right.
At all. And that's something that we had to deal with. And based off of the interactions of good moralistic people, they came to like us because they, over time and over observing our actions, saw that our intent in that area was good.
Okay.
And I think, when you have a culture that indoctrinates into their youth, as much as that culture indoctrinates into its youth, I can only really hope that our presence there may potentially change that coming up generation.
It's a nice hope, but it cost us $2 trillion.
Right. And
we can't afford it.
No. And that's something that, again, goes back to maintaining the welfare of our own country.
We can't afford to save Afghanistan from itself. We can't do it. We can't even fix potholes in this country.
And one of the things I've been thinking about recently, is mostly due to the counterterrorism assignments and stuff that I've been looking at, is if we pull back and come back to our own country and just say cut all financial aid to any other country outside of ourselves as a way to do a bit of damage control on our budget to get our own shit back in the check before we start reaching into other pots, so to speak. We can combat terrorism from here using different types of tactics than what we've used in the past 13 years on the ground.
Yes.
And I think that in a large respect, it would be more effective to have almost like strike cells, where you're looking at joint attachment to every other country. But again, it's an idea I've been playing with in my head, framework-wise.
Your idea works, but you must have a secure homeland.
Yes. The first order of work in the defense is security.
You cannot do Fortress America.
Correct. And the first order of work in the defense is security, and it needs to be security.
That's right.
And that's something that we, over the last 13 years in particular, have gotten away from as a culture, because we look at the world and we're injected in so many different places that we have concerns and we have assets and we have individuals that are in all these different parts of the world that we forget that there's work to be done here, that we need to take care of this population that's been at war for the last 13 years.
Sir, how about 25?
Well, yeah. I mean, if we really look at it.
I was 22 years old down in Los Angeles. I had just gotten out of ROTC, and lo and behold, George Bush started Gulf War I. That was the whole highway of death in the Iraq-Kuwait thing. That was back in, what, 92?
Yeah.
24 years ago.
Yep.
Now, previous to that, 8 or 10 years previously, various American agencies had been supplying both Iraq and Iran with plenty of war toys so they could kill each other.
Yeah.
Millions of Iranians and Iraqis killed each other in the marshes of southern Iraq so that Americans didn't have to pull the trigger.
And there was something that was in a video that we watched in our course that said, if I'm fighting two enemies, I still lose my people. But if I supply the means for those two enemies to fight each other, they just kill themselves, and none of my people die.
Okay. Here's the thing. I spent years of my life investing, trying to make things right. Chris and you went to Afghanistan trying to make things right. At the end of that time, I don't hate Afghans or Iraqis or Muslims, but they're not compatible with us. They want to wear chadors and have halal meat and you know, pray 5 times a day. Okay, but it just doesn't work in America.
I mean, to a certain extent, and
let them go do that thing. But that's what the Middle East is for.
Well, I mean, the radical side of the religion definitely will not allow for the establishment of Western ideals. But there are Muslims that are capable of being compatible in our society.
And they need to go back to the Middle East and moderate the radicals. When you have a religion that goes out of its way to export terror, there's only 2 answers. One is to fight them with machine guns, and the other is to just compartmentalize. That's your playground. This is mine. When you want to play nice, come talk to me. Until then, stay in your playground. I don't need your freaking oil.
Well, if we're now the world's leading producer in oil thanks to our own practices with fracking and actual oil drilling, which provides us with our own bit of stability, but we've gotten involved in so much stuff while trying to procure security in our resources that a majority of the population is not going to understand the concept of giving them their own playground to play in and forcing them to play in their playground because they're going to throw segregation.
We have to. We don't have a choice.
You're not going to be able to convince the population to do that, though.
Of the American population, they'll come around to it. When their daughter's being raped in the streets, you better believe it.
But it's going to take that for them to react in that fashion. You're not going to be able to do it without a cause.
They're damn close right now.
It's even while you're waiting for the ingredients to sit there and fester, until that catalyst sparks, there's not going to be a reaction that's going to allow people to understand what the real world looks like.
Do you know it took 10 years for this country to get to the level of understanding of Islam? And once we got that level of understanding, because we had sent 3 million soldiers to Iraq and Afghanistan and back again, now that we understand what Islam's all about, nobody wants anything to do with it. That took 10 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Now we're about to get up close and personal with these guys in our own home streets. If that continues, with Americans being as ornery as they are, and as well-armed as they are, and as distrustful of their own government as they are, you know, you're at a crossroads. I would much rather see this thing end peacefully and nice and shake hands and, you know, let's just divorce friendly than the alternative.
And that's the thing. I think the alternative at this point, with the way that our society has developed over the last 150 years, this is going to be potentially that catalyst that's going to cause the reaction in society.
If it causes that catalyst, then we turn into Yugoslavia in 1993.
Start stockpiling.
Start what?
Start stockpiling.
I've got mine.
I mean, I legitimately think it's going to come down to this ineptitude of a societal construct where we honestly think that the world is our problem. It's going to come down to a hard realization for a public to understand that there are people out there that want to destroy everything that we hold dear based off of their own beliefs. And could the acceptance of refugees coming out of those areas be an implant strategy for an amorphous war? Absolutely. But are you going to be able to do anything about it with the current setting in society? No.
Well, I think it will change pretty damn quickly.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that at all.
We've got about, you know, this next election, you know, it's going to be a peaceful revolution or a violent one.
Too many sheep.
Are you sure?
Yeah, we're not pushed far enough yet.
You know as well as I do that 10% of a population can make war on the other 90% if that 10% have a war spirit and they're armed.
Yep. We're at 2%, a little less than 1% as veterans.
Well, work out your numbers. Even the guys who are just weekend warriors or you know, do their militias in the hills thing, half of them are crazy too. You know, if your catalyst is a fight against Muslims, today it'll be the Muslims, tomorrow it'll be black people or Mexicans, whatever. Now you've got a continental-wide bloodbath that will not end until there's a lot of people dead. In Yugoslavia, there were countries to come in and pull people apart so they didn't kill each other. If America goes into a Yugoslavia-type situation, there's nobody to stop it.
Right. My concern and ultimate question is, to get really philosophical with this shit, is there ever going to be an end to it?
If the election is stolen, that will be a catalyst. If we have continuing terrorism in America, that would be a catalyst. If the economy collapses tomorrow, that's a catalyst.
So when 9/11 happened, and the public was exposed to what it's like to be in the rest of the world, it still wasn't enough to wake up a population.
Okay, that was 15 years ago.
15 years ago.
15
But that was
years
a
ago,
massive
Chris was still in
domestic
charge.
attack.
Now he's a veteran.
It could. Why was that not the catalyst that was necessary to get people to understand?
People did not understand Muslim back then. On September 10th of 2001, I was living up in Anchorage, Alaska. I was going to get a video that night. I went out and got Lawrence of Arabia because I wanted to try to understand and say, maybe it's just me. Maybe, I should try to understand more. Came September 11th. I went down and donated blood, and that Friday night I took those videos back and never watched them. Now, I'm just one guy, and that's a silly anecdote. But my point is, in the 15 years since 9/11, there have probably been 50 million Americans who have been directly or indirectly educated and taught hatred. There really is a deep level of hatred. That's the kind of hatred that is not quenched easily. If it gets started, it won't stop. And it won't stop just with Muslims. It will keep on going and keep on going. Blacks will kill whites, will kill Koreans, will kill, Koreans will kill Mexicans, Mexicans will kill Muslims. It won't stop.
Well, I mean, to a certain extent, that's not something that's really stopped. I mean, it's downsized to what some people would argue is a manageable level because of the development of society within the country. But it's never stopped. It never will stop. There's always, again, philosophically, which Chris knows how much I suck at philosophy.
Okay.
You're always going to have bad guys to fight. That's just part of it.
Of course. It's not about having bad guys to fight or having corruption in government when these are manageable levels. But
Right.
when the average guy, the average Joe, is no longer average, but he's on the front line, people get their back to the wall and they get weird.
Yeah, that's absolutely correct. But
Yeah, you ever been in a gunfight and you're fucking boxers and flip-flops?
once or twice.
Don't do that. That's a bad
That is
idea.
good shit.
I'm talking about radicalization. Desperate times make desperate men.
Right.
Desperate men do not make good neighbors.
No. And again, start stockpiling.
Well, I guess if one of the problems with having these online discussions is there's always a sneaking suspicion, is the government spying on me? Well, if they are,
Let them.
then maybe they should hear what the regular Joes of America are saying. If I could say anything, it is this. They had better figure out how to make sure that the government is doing right by the American people, because they're running out of time to make sure that happens. It's not me. There's millions of, Jesus, we just had 15 guys up in Oregon.
Yeah. And I was wondering if that was going to domino.
Well, I think a lot of people were wondering.
Well, if
There were
you
probably 10,000 guys who were privately saying, I wonder what's going to happen.
and here's the thing that you look at, or that I looked at mostly during that entire occurrence, was how that was covered and portrayed in the media.
How, what now? In the
How it
media?
was covered and portrayed in the media.
You
Domestic
didn't really
terrorism.
see a good version of it in the Western media, but you could actually get better coverage of it in foreign media.
Yeah.
You're an MI guy. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
Open
yeah.
source foreign media.
No, and a lot of that's the thing though. That's a specific niche that understands where they have to go to get the truth. But you look at your average citizen that's, plugged in if we're lucky, to fucking CNN or Fox News or MSNBC on occasion when you're not watching fucking the Kardashians. The way that they're able to skew the view or change perspectives on events. I
They
mean,
can't. But the average Vietnamese in 1965 was a rice farmer who didn't give a rat's ass about the Vietnam War. And yet those little Viet Cong fuckers fought this country to a standstill. You don't need the entire population to get it. Just enough of them.
the 10% rule.
Okay. Do you think that we're at that 15% rule? I don't know, with 5 million veterans, 300 million guns, about 100 million people who are voting for Trump or Sanders or Cruz. Do you think we've passed that threshold?
The threshold of people that are agitated, yes. The threshold of people that are actually going to do something about it and sacrifice the comfort that they've built up.
Well, wait a minute now. In 2008, you remember a little group called Occupy Wall Street?
Yep.
Okay. They were a bunch of hippies who went and sang songs and kumbaya and waved those little signs in Wall Street, and they got their ass kicked. All they did was they set up a tent in Central Park and shit on the park and did stupid ass, smoking dope for Jesus, whatever the hell it was. Those guys were the liberals.
Yeah.
Okay. If those same guys had been hard-ass radical conservatives, do you think there would have been a difference when the cops tried to come and break them up with water cannons?
Yeah, maybe a little bit.
Okay.
I think that, well, I mean, guys never would have approached that situation in that.
They probably would not have.
No.
But I'm not talking about how they solve issues. Your radical, militia types don't go to demonstrations on Wall Street. Hell no. They would have just blown it up.
And that's the thing is,
We don't want to get to that point.
well, with the establishment. Sorry, I found a jalapeno in my salad. With the establishment of the Department of Homeland Security, and this is one of the things that really concerns me about our government from the perspective of being a patriot. You have the threat that the Department of Homeland Security has put out as their number one concern, being domestic terrorism.
That's right.
Now,
But they're not terrorists.
to a certain extent, that could be applied to implants from other areas that are here to raise hell based on their beliefs. But to another percentage of that, and probably the more likely thing, is how closely are they starting to look at guys that are getting agitated?
I'm not agitated. I'm frightened for the future of my country. I'm not an agitator. Take a guy like me. I'm not out to be a threat to anybody. Chris is not out to be a threat to anybody. We're not agitating. But we're not going to be victims.
Right.
That's all we're saying. I would like for America to pull its act together,
Right.
and start doing things which are rational and productive for the citizens of America and for our better allies. I don't need to be friends with Pakistan. And having our president rip up on a soapbox and try to stir up a race riot,
Yeah.
that's a bad plan. I'm not agitating. The guy in the White House, that's agitating. I didn't invite Al Sharpton to come speak to extol his wisdom to America. That's a bad plan.
Yeah.
Those guys in Oregon, I don't know. I mean, Yeah, they all had guns in their hips. They're farmers. Those guys all carry guns in their hips. You know, if they were so dangerous,
Where's the
I don't know,
bloodshed?
it looked to me like they were carrying signs.
What's up?
They were all carrying signs and making YouTube videos.
They were looking for a diplomatic solution because the amount of exposure that would be necessary to rectify the situation that they were subjected to wasn't getting coverage because nobody gives a shit about that demographic of people.
They will when they're hungry.
By then, it's too late.
Farmers and ranchers grow food. You screw over your farmers and ranchers, and one day there are no more farmers and ranchers. Now you're all stuck on trusting Monsanto to provide your Toasties.
Right.
That's not a good plan. And a government that promotes that, thinking it's going to be clever, that's not a good plan. It doesn't take a genius to figure that one out.
Yeah, I can't fault you.
What do you got, Chris? You've been very quiet.
I think I'm done. I think I'm done for tonight. We've gone.
Wow, I'm disappointed.
Well, we've gone 2.5 hours. Show usually doesn't go that long, and I've had a long.
All I can say is I hope for any other listeners out there that I hope that our guardians of the country wake up and realize that we have got to make some wiser choices long run as a country, because these are not good moves that we're making.
No. And the caveat of that a little bit, to a certain extent, the people that are in charge now obviously need to recognize the full extent of the issues that are at hand. I think we're starting the preliminary identification at a large government level of issues, which is why you're seeing the extreme range of candidates that are being publicized now. But the long term is we need to get back to educating our public.
Yes.
I think the drop off in standards for education over the last 25, 30 years, it's definitely something that's going to need to be addressed, but it's going to take an active society in order to do that effectively.
Well, we need some better solutions than we have.
It's going to take more conversation on topics that people need to get out of their fucking uncomfort zone to talk about.
Yeah.
Stop throwing race cards to avoid issues and start talking about issues that really need to be fucking dealt with.
Yeah. Yeah. Stop throwing the damn race card. Stop winking at when Hillary Clinton pulls it, or the woman card, or that kind of nonsense. I don't need the first woman president, the first black president, the first gay president. I need a decent president who knows what he's doing.
Yeah. And I mean,
don't care what color or gender or ideology that person is. You got to know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And that person has to be utterly committed to the future of this country and this country's children.
One of the things that I think, and I'm very hopeful for within the future, is after this for my generation, 13 year, for the older generation, 25 years, 30 years of this exposure into the world, I hope that the people that have served, or the people that are around the people that have served, understand the importance of coming back and continuing to hold that oath up on the domestic side. And what I mean by that is taking an active interest in politics. And I really believe that within the next 20 to 25 years, we should see a surge of veterans in office, in positions, because a lot of the petty bullshit that civilians worry about with race and gender and political correctness and all this other horse shit. In the military, it's simple. Everybody's green.
Do your damn job.
Amen.
And you do your damn job. That's all I want from you.
Yeah.
That's it. I
Same
mean,
here.
it's simple. You take care of the ones to your left and your right. I don't care anything else outside of that. Who you are, where you came from, what color you are, nothing. But it's going to take that influence in the political mainstream, I think, to fix a lot of the issues that have resulted from these jackasses getting too long of a leash.
Yes. Yeah.
But we've got to maintain our guys because we're getting burnt out, and we come back and we don't want to deal with it. And it needs to become a part of the veteran community to reach out to your community and take what you've learned as a veteran, as a service member, and put that back into your community.
Well, I'm trying. And I'd like to do it so this country comes out of it safe and sane and whole.
I'm trying to do something like that where I live too.
You know? 'Cause I don't like it when I have to look over my shoulder all the time. I don't know if the economy is going to collapse tomorrow. I don't know if I'm going to be attacked if I walk down the wrong street. I don't know if I can get medical care. I might lose my job. I mean, we're always looking over our shoulders. Always. You know, something's got to change.
Yeah, it's getting to reach its outer limit.
Well, I guess that's it for the
Yeah, I think it's about time to call it a night. All right, ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Brushfire Mind at 2100 every Friday night. Remember, if you build a man a fire, you'll keep him warm for the evening. But if you set a man on fire, you'll keep him warm for the rest of his life. Good night.
Cheers.
Cheers.
There's something wrong with you, man.